Hello, welcome back to Out on That Line podcast. It is week 127. I'm Jeff with my co-host Alex. As always, Alex, how you doing this week?
It's me, Jeff. On the podcast, it's me. And I know you know exactly where I was going with that one. An apropos segue into this week's opening segment. But first, Jeff, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well. We'll see how I'm doing after we talk about what we're going to talk about to open the show here. But I am very excited for the album that we're here to do this week, and it's going to be the Zach Bryan album. Zach Bryan. Make it easy. Self-titled albums always good, but good in my book because I don't have to look them up and read them or anything like that. They're just easy to remember. So we'll get to that later. But you were obviously referencing, I think, what everybody on the planet knows, or at least on planet US of A. Taylor Swift went to the Kansas City Chiefs football game to see Travis Kelce play in that football game. And if this is not the meeting of like the two biggest juggernauts of the American cultural zeitgeist, like I don't know what else has ever been like this. Like what other combination has ever happened that's as big in each of their like industries? And in sports it's football, and then everybody else in the US. And then for music right now it's Taylor Swift and then everybody else. And they are like, those fan bases are coming together right now, not meeting that nicely, mind you. They're not meshing all that well. It's a bit of a
It's not
oil and water
seamless.
situation, as you might expect. A little bit, I guess, just more general opposite viewpoints with each of those fan bases. I think there is some overlap, but not as much as you'd think. And yeah, just kind of funny seeing the discourse of like what each side has to say about the other, and like how lucky the other side is to now be associated with the side that you've been on. It's just like a very, very petty situation. And like obviously none of it means anything. We're talking about a game and a musical artist. Like none of it really like matters in the long run, but it's, you wouldn't know it by like how personal some of these attacks are getting on people. It is nuts in there.
This is going to be the kind of thing that burns brightly and beautifully and for a limited time only, because I don't think, for exactly the reasons you're saying, that's going to get to them at a certain point. They can't both be the juggernaut. Taylor Swift being the queen doesn't make Travis Kelce the king. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So I think there can only be one, and they're both going to get that in their heads. Like, who's carrying the weight in this power couple?
So each side, what they're saying is, all the Swifties are saying that Travis Kelce's just like hoping that he can latch on to her fame, and granted, yes, I think overall Taylor Swift is more famous to more people than Travis Kelce is. I mean, outside of America for sure. But I think still even here. The thing is though, like the NFL is massive. Like it's one of the biggest cultural events in the country. The Super Bowl is like the reason it's a Sunday, and it doesn't even matter if you don't watch any football, you probably go to a Super Bowl party. You probably eat wings, you probably eat nachos, you probably do all those things because it's Super Bowl Sunday. It's a sport, but that's how important the NFL is in this country. So all the NFL fans are saying, Taylor Swift is trying to now like latch onto the NFL. I don't think they're saying to Travis Kelce specifically. I think they're saying she's associating herself with the league, with the badge, so to speak, in order to kind of grow her fan base. And probably brilliant move by her, because there's a lot of Cowboys fans, and clearly they're willing to spend their money on stupid things. So they'll probably spend their money on her stuff. So it's really like it's a brilliant business decision at the end of the day. I think people are misconstruing though that she's sidling up with the league, not like Travis Kelce has the sway that matters for her. It's the league that does. And he happens to be an available, very famous part of that league within that little bubble. And I'm
Let
surprised.
me
I can't believe I put that much thought into this.
let me to that end, let me pitch you a $1 billion idea,
Okay.
okay? The Chiefs go to the Super Bowl this year, and Taylor Swift plays the halftime show. Now tell me That's not a license to print money. It's a smart business decision. And I'll tell you something else, Jeff. You want to talk about smart business decisions? We are not sponsored by Google Meet, but we do pay for a professional version of it to record this podcast. This podcast, which exists on the internet, a special subsection of the internet for video hosting, primarily, some would say solely, and that platform is called YouTube. And where can you find us on YouTube? Well, that's easy. YouTube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, it's not rocket science. Look, even if you're a Taylor Swift fan, you can operate this kind of thing, okay? Even if you're Travis Kelsey himself, you have the brain cells required, the bare minimum to operate YouTube.com. And all you got to do is add that. If you can get that on, if you can like practice with some alphabets or skettios or something, just like arranging the letters and sounding them out. You see, a W is like an M, but upside down and with a woo. You can learn a lot of stuff like that. Okay. We're going off the rails consistently at youtube.com/C/out on that line. Folks, it's a bonanza. You got to get in there and subscribe and leave comments and like the video and turn on your notifications and tell other people you know at youtube.com/C/out on that line.
Well, what do you say we talk about a little bit of Zach Bryan finally on this podcast? He's been mentioned, he's been talked about, but I don't think we've ever really gotten into his music. I did one reaction video to a song that's actually on this album that we're going to talk about. So you should go check that out, and you can find that at youtube.com/C/out on that line, along with many, many, many other reaction videos. So kind of whatever music you like, we probably got a reaction video in that genre for you. Um, I'll get it out of the way quickly. I really like this album a whole bunch. I mean, couldn't have been more up my alley, I don't think, as far as the type of country music that I really enjoy. I think what he's doing with this kind of recent run that he has, and he's released a ton of music. I think we just had a recent EP release that we haven't even got a chance to like listen to because it just came out. This album just came out, what, 3-4 weeks ago, I think, like very recently. And he's just in the groove right now, I guess. And I hadn't really listened to a lot of Zach Bryan before this. I mean, maybe a couple songs here and there. But my plate was pretty full still with Sturgill Simpson and Tyler Childers and Coulter Wall and Billy Strings. You know, I had a lot of those artists, and I hadn't really listened to a ton of country lately anyway. And this album finally came out and was finally in. I wanted to look at his like the Me and All My Homies Hate Ticketmaster, whatever that album was that he came out with previously. That was a live album. I wanted to like dive into that one, but I was, a live album, I don't know. Thankfully, he came out with this one like very soon after that one. And this is a fully fleshed out regular album, self-titled. And I think the reason is because it's like, this is probably just him. You know, I think this is what he considers to be his best work thus far. So he put his name on it and I think it's fitting. I really think there's something to be said for lacking a little bit of variety in the music throughout the album, but I think the songwriting is strong enough, even on the weaker spots, that it holds it up kind of no matter what throughout the whole album.
Yeah, I would agree with the sentiment that like my primary takeaway overall is a double-edged sword, which is a lot of the songs on this thing are riffing on the same theme to the point where in my mind I'm like it's almost like different variations on the same song, like the same exact song, the way that it sounds, what it's about. And I thought that was kind of a cool idea. I think you hit a point of diminishing returns on it. Um, a little more than halfway through it where it doesn't get unenjoyable. Some of the best stuff's in the back half, but what makes it a little difficult to discern is you're like it's kind of all running together. Like I was driving through the Kangamegas Mountains at night. It was like something out of lore. And I was listening to this and it just like I slipped into it very easily and I liked it for that reason. You're just like on a winding mountain road and this is going with you. That's great. But in terms of like what was memorable, what stuck out, it wasn't until subsequent listens that I could really pick things out because it does tend
Mhm.
to sound all the same, which is not a bad problem to have when it sounds this good, but it was one thing that stuck out to me.
And I think that was I kinda knew that, and once I listened through it the first time, I was like, I feel like I kinda knew you were gonna have that response to it, and I understood why. And I didn't think of it like, "Oh, you know, he's gonna say that about this album, and I'm gonna be so mad about him." Like, yeah, I think he's that's something he's gonna notice about this one because I think it's something that it is a common theme that we talk about, and it's probably before doing the show, it's not something I ever would have really thought about that much, is kind of that album sequencing and kind of how you structure things, your ebbs and flows throughout the album on kind of what you're presenting to the listener. Um, I think the most enjoyable albums consistently, what they have in common is some real kind of dynamic feeling throughout the album. Whether that's like emotionally or lyrically or musically, like wherever that sort of dynamic feeling comes from, it needs to be there. And I think where this album was very, very strong in what it is, which is, you kind of general singer songwriter, I think it's almost like a Jason Isbell light. It kind of gets rocking, but not quite as much as he gets rocking. The songwriting's very good. The storytelling is very good. Not maybe not quite as good as like a Jason Isbell. That's why it's kind of like Isbell light to me. I think he's really just about there. And I do think after going back and listening to quite a bit of his older stuff as well, and just kind of everything else that he's released, this is kind of the best of what he's done. So this is the most cohesive sort of project I think he's put together thus far. There were some really good standout songs on this for me. I think, what was it, Fear and Fridays, I think was the name of it. Yeah, Fear and Fridays was very good. East Side of Sorrow I thought was great. Jake's Piano I thought was, that was one of the few songs that was very much like outside of the theme generally of the rest of the album, because he's got that song with Casey Musgraves that I think essentially sums up like what you were saying is a very similar theme throughout the album and something that he consistently goes back to. Starts the song out, rock gut whiskey's gonna ease my mind. Beach towel rests on a drying line. Do I remind you of your daddy in his 88 Ford, Labrador hanging out the passenger door? It's like he's very good at painting a picture, like very good at getting you into an emotional space. He's very consistent with that too, for better and worse on the album. I think exactly as you're saying. It's like it's strong in what he's doing, but it would be nice to see if there's something else that he's strong in that maybe would break things up a little bit. Give it a little bit more variety, give it something a little more exciting. And it's there's enough standout stuff here that it's not really a detriment for me, but I can absolutely see where you and others I've seen talking about the album are coming from, where it's a strong effort, but just almost over the hump.
Well, he is rightfully lauded for being a prolific songwriter. He's constantly writing, he's constantly coming out with stuff. I think that's awesome. It is a intimidating amount of music to listen to, which
Hmm.
makes that a little tough. And it's a little daunting, like listening to this album and like going back through it. But he's not writing wildly different material. And again, that sounds like a knock, but it's a feature, not a bug. I think when you do what he does so well, you can afford to kind of keep following that line. So
Hmm.
I don't look at it and go like, I was bored or I don't think it's good. I just kind of hit a point where I was like touching the limit and saying, this is just enough. If he had put two more songs on there, it might have like seriously tested me.
Yeah.
Again, it's not about the quality. It's just about like the variety in the experience. And I don't mean to make everything sound like a piece of art, but ostensibly that's what it is. And there are certain flourishes you can do, like we talk about track placement, we talk about length, that
Hmm.
can kind of put you off a little bit. But I think what this has going for it, first and foremost, is this level of honesty, and we gotta say it, authenticity
Yeah.
that's in the songwriting that rings through. I agree. That's why it's a great self title because it's the most personal. He said he made this for himself and he doesn't care if people like it. And at
Mhm.
first I was like, that's an awfully combative way to go about it.
Yeah.
But then you listen to it and you're like, all right, I get what he was saying.
Yeah. And I think he's got a lot to be proud of on this one.
Absolutely.
I think the one thing, and I bet you, I almost guarantee I thought about this too. There was two things. It was that I figured you were gonna talk about how it just didn't, it just kind of blended together a lot, and it really, really did. If I didn't see the track changes like on my on my phone, on my screen, wherever I was listening to it, it would be some of the songs they do go right into the same kind of riff, same kind of like key, same kind of tone. Um, but that song was Sierra Farrell. She never had like a feature. She was there for a harmony and it sounded fantastic. Like the
Mm.
song, it sounded fantastic, even what they did. But I would have preferred, just like Casey Musgraves got her own kind of verse on that, I would have loved to hear what she would have done with her voice on a song on this album.
Can I tell you a perhaps hot take? I think I would have liked to see Sierra Farrell doing the Casey Musgraves part on that song. Not that there was
Mhm.
anything wrong with Casey Musgraves. Okay, we love her. She's great. I walked in, I said, "Wow, Casey Musgraves." And I think she is a better fit for the subject matter. Sierra Farrell's not really like a hanging out the Ford with the Labrador. She's a
No.
little more honky tonk sensitive. Like she does the song Years on
Mhm.
that John Anderson tribute album, which is incredible, by the way.
Mhm.
And she kills it. It's perfect. So I really would have liked to have had her have a feature at all, but part of me was like, I really would have liked to have heard her do that Casey Musgrave song. It was an interesting choice not to like really, really bring her in because their voices are such a natural fit. And I
Mhm.
think his is going to continue to grow. He still seems a little like he doesn't necessarily fully trust his instrument, and is like, it's the songwriting, it's the simplicity of the
Mhm.
execution, it's the production. Like that's really what this is. I'd love to see him find the next gear because I know he's got it in him, and he's so prolific. It's gonna come out
Yeah.
eventually. Um, but yeah, I don't mean to like make it sound like I'm beating up on this thing,
Yeah.
like I didn't like it. I really enjoyed the shit out of it. It was, I guess I'm just leading with criticisms because when something is that good, how many different ways can I find to be like, holy shit? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Yeah. And I feel like you can draw a lot of parallels between his career so far and Casey Musgraves and Sturgill Simpson and Tyler Childers. And you listen to all of their earlier works, you had, and I use this example all the time. You had Sturgill Simpson go from High Top Mountain, like some of the most like kind of honky tonkin country you've ever heard in your life, to Sound and Fury, to Dude, the Ballad of Dude and Juanita. Just like such a drastic advancement in the type of music that he was playing, the way his voice developed, the way Tyler Childers' voice developed. Like Tyler Childers could always really belt it out, but it was definitely a kind of on the edge, out of control. He was barely kind of containing it. The Can I Take My Hounds to Heaven album was fantastic with what he was able to do with his voice. Clearly had been working on it. Now, if Zach Bryan can take the kind of steps that they did, think of like Casey Musgraves, like the same trailer, different park, going to pageant material and then getting to Golden Hour. Like think of like the steps she went through to get to that album. And I hope for Zach Bryan that's the same trajectory he's on, that he's just at that earlier point right now. And we've got all these other very accomplished artists. If he had come up at the same time as them, I bet you we'd be talking about him as a like complete contemporary with them, which I think
He'd be a
popular.
regular Oliver Anthony.
Yeah. Almost. No, don't give him that much credit. But I think he's gonna get there. And I think albums like this is where you like really find out, where your strengths are. His strength clearly right now is that I don't want to say Americana, but that Americana kind of sound, that like Nashville sort of sound. I think he's a lot more leans towards that very clean Nashville kind of sound, like a Jason Isbell, that like a Blackberry Smoke kind of thing. I think he's more able to lean towards that than, Tyler Childers still definitely plays that kind of Appalachian style country, very heavily centered on like bluegrass and things like that a lot. Sturgill Simpson, same deal, keeps going back to bluegrass and straight like honky tonk country. I think if Zach Bryan continues this trajectory, probably we're talking about him above, popularity wise and kind of in the industry above any of the other folks we've just talked about. I think he's got a very like his voice is very warm. I think that's a strength of his, is that it's very easy for him to draw you in because it's smooth. It's like a smoky glass of whiskey. It's exactly how it's supposed to sound for music like this. And I really am looking forward to him finding some more strengths so that he can get some more variety involved with what he's doing.
Well, and he's coming up at a very interesting time. Like when I reference Oliver Anthony, country is very online right now. For better or worse, TikTok has the ability to like really set off certain trends.
Mhm.
Um, and I think country's having a moment on the internet and it's produced some really interesting results and some interesting viral moments. And I think Zach Bryan's 100% a beneficiary of that because what he's doing is very hard to categorize outside of country. Is it indie country? Is it Americana? Is it singer songwriter? I think he's kind of a weird mix of like, and this is going to sound like wild, but Kurt Cobain and Woody Guthrie, or Kurt Cobain and John Prine might be more appropriate
Mhm.
because he's writing these very, very personal songs that have a country simplicity. They're not afraid to get depressing, but they're ultimately all kind of hopeful because they're working through these kinds of issues and they're cathartic for him. Whereas something like Kurt Cobain was like very grunge and anti-establishment and in your face, and Zach Bryan's got a lot of music like that. He just doesn't kind of dwell in that disaffection the way that Kurt Cobain and Nirvana and the grunge scene did, but
Mhm.
it's definitely got that unexpected aesthetic to it that he's really kind of the only one doing. Because the other alternatives again are our friend with the if the 300-pound fudge rounds.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if he wants to be very political, and I think he is generally very political in his life. And I think he speaks up a lot. I think he had a huge argument with like Travis Tritt, some old redneck country guy. And he got into it online with him, I'm pretty sure, where it's like I think it had to do with Bud Light, supporting, was it Dylan Mulvaney? Was that the name of
Yes. Yep.
the artist, or was it artist or model? I don't know. But when they supported them with that one-off special edition can, and yeah, I don't know. I mean, for like everybody was so mad about it, but I think they got into it over that. And I think Zach Bryan is never going to be afraid to speak his mind. I think that's a good thing. I think you need people like him and like Tyler Childers and like Casey Musgraves. And I know, say what you want about maybe there was a better choice than Casey Musgraves for that song. And I won't disagree with you about that. But man, it was nice to hear her do a straight up country song again.
To like bring it back around to Zach Bryan, he is someone, like you said earlier, who's got a lot to be proud of. I mean, he's one of the most streamed individuals week over week, month over month. 2003 has been his year. He's playing giant sold out stage. I couldn't get tickets.
Hmm.
Brandon and Tanner and I were going to go and we couldn't get tickets. It was just insane. Um, because I think he doesn't need a lot of production bells and whistles. He just needs exactly what's on his mind and the simplest terms to convey it. And that makes it like very enjoyable music. It's not reinventing anything, it's not putting a hat on a hat. So I am personally going to say, even though it sounds like at least the beginning and many times throughout, like I was dunking on this thing. Again, you just don't want Zach Bryan. I'm sure he's going to be real damaged by what I had to say here today, but we don't want him to go and get a big head. But I am going to award this one a buy it.
Yes, I am going to as well because honestly, this is such a when you're just like doing stuff around the house, you're just having a nice Sunday afternoon, you just want to kind of like lay around and do nothing. This is a put this album on. Do yourself a favor and put it on a good speaker system. We always tell you that. That's always the recommendation. Put it on the best speaker system you got in the house and listen to it and just enjoy it for what it is. I think you're going to find a lot of things. If you like country music, I think you're going to find a lot of things to like about this album. All the way through, you may have the same reaction we did. If you hated it and, or if you loved it even more than we did, let us know down in the comments. Let us know if there's anything else that you want to hear. I think we still have probably a couple more albums in these next few weeks that we know we have lined up. But let us know if there's anything you want us to review, anything you want us to do a reaction to. Alex, is there anything else that you have to say this week?
I just want to say we've got a lot of tasty treats coming down the pike, stuff that you don't know what's coming, but we do. So stay tuned to youtube.com/C/out on that line. Keep it here if you're already here, and we'll see you down the road.
Until next time.